asks, how much time does Monster Universe have left? See if it's all better and check this out.
Since its launch in 2008, the MCU has given us a total of 30 films, 19 television series, and exactly 0 Mephistos. And this is all while they didn't have the rights to all of their characters. Now that they can use the X-Men and Fantastic Four, I want to see if I can predict how much longer the MCU is going to stick around for. I'm going to focus on how many films Marvel can potentially release, and not necessarily the television series, because with shows like What If and She-Hulk and the upcoming X-Men 97, Marvel is showing that they can release a series on anything featuring any character, and while these shows can provide info into what's going on with the characters in between films, like Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki, and WandaVision, they haven't necessarily dictated the direction of the MCU or extended it beyond what was originally planned. And I don't see Marvel continuing the verse if they're finished with making the movies, as the films are the one that bring in the big bucks. Currently, we're at the end of Phase 4, encroaching on Phase 5, which seems to primarily be set up for Phase 6 and the big event that is Secret Wars in 2026. Throughout these phases, up until Secret Wars, Marvel has planned that it will release about 3 movies a year, barring any unforeseen delays. I think this is a decent way to gauge how much longer we have left if we go off of potential movies that Marvel could make with the characters that they have at their disposal. Since Secret Wars is the furthest film out, we can start our predictions from there, as the MCU would follow the ramifications of Secret Wars and its future films in the same way it's done before with the original Avengers film and more recently, Endgame. In Marvel Comics, the original Secret Wars is an event where heroes and villains from across the Marvel Universe are brought in a battle world to fight for the amusement of the Beyonder. In 2015, Marvel redid the event. However, this time things were a little different. Instead of the Beyonder creating this battle world and bringing heroes and villains together to fight for his amusement, this battle world was created by Doom, and it was made up of multiple universes across the Marvel multiverse. It was also the culmination of a series of events that led to an incursion happening in the main Marvel Comics universe.
Incursion? An incursion occurs when the boundary between two universes erodes, destroying one or both entirely.
With that in mind, and knowing that Kang and his multiversal war are going to be major key points in the upcoming Kang Dynasty and Secret War films, we can assume that afterwards the MCU is going to be recovering from a battle that combined the multiverse into one universe, which is how many fans assume they're going to introduce the X-Men to the MCU. With that knowledge, we can assume that Marvel is going to do at least 3 main X-Men films, because trilogies are cool, but also because they want one film to introduce the X-Men to the MCU, one film to follow up on that, and maybe have them deal with someone like Magneto, and one film that either deals with the Phoenix or Apocalypse. I think those 2 characters will be dealt with in separate films because they're both stories you have to do eventually if you're doing the X-Men, and both of these qualify as Avengers level events. And seeing as how they're in the MCU, I don't see the Avengers just letting the X-Men deal with the Phoenix or Apocalypse by themselves. We're also guaranteed to get an Avengers vs. X-Men film because you just have to. Now, I don't know if that'll be included within the 3 films, so I'm gonna mark it as its own simply because I want to see it get its own film. And before we move from the X-Men, we are guaranteed to get a solo Wolverine film, even if it isn't Hugh Jackman playing the titular role, because it's freaking Wolverine, man. He's one of the coolest characters ever. Now, I know there are other X-Men characters and mutant teams that could get their own film, like X-Factor or X-Force, but I think if Marvel does anything with them, it'll be in a Disney Plus series. Moving on from the mutant side, I think we're going to get at least 2 more Fantastic Four films. Point 1 being, it'll give us a trilogy, and we know how much Hollywood loves those. And point 2 being that the first film will be their introduction to the MCU, so the second and third ones can be used to segue us into future Avengers level events, like dealing with Doctor Doom or Galactus. I also think we're due for 2 to 3 more Avengers movies. I'm gonna count that third as that Avengers vs. X-Men movie that I mentioned earlier, and the other 2 are probably gonna be big events dealing with the previously mentioned big bads from the X-Men and the Fantastic Four. Now that we've gotten the big guys out of the way, time to predict the smaller movies that'll get made. First being the Young Avengers. All the characters are currently on the playing board, so it's one of those things where it's kind of confirmed, but not really, because it's super obvious that you do this film, but also if they don't, kind of understand. Next is another Doctor Strange film, because this would be his third, making those films a trilogy. And the fact that they essentially gave us an open plot point that needs to be resolved at the end of Multiverse of Madness means we're getting another movie. And to cap out another trilogy is Captain Marvel. These movies do pretty well, and even though I don't know what it'd be about, I can absolutely see Marvel making. What I don't see Marvel making, however, is a solo Hulk film. Even though the Hulk hasn't had his own solo film since 2008, I don't see Marvel giving him one in the future, but rather letting him play co-lead in another film, like he did in Ragnarok. Speaking of Ragnarok, I don't see Thor getting any more movies, but rather playing the cameo role and just being there in other films where he's not the main focus, but he's playing a contributing factor to the story. I also don't see the Guardians getting another movie, as Marvel has their replacement in the Fantastic Four. They're going to fill the role of the fun family going on cosmic adventures. Marvel has also directly stated they have a Shang-Chi sequel planned, but since it's not on a docket for future movie releases, it'll probably get released during this hypothetical time frame. I can also see Marvel doing 2 other movies with a character who isn't really mainstream, kind of like how they did Shang-Chi or Ant-Man, in order to fill the in-between the events time. And finally, Marvel has to do a Dark Avengers because it allows them to make a film directly from the perspective of villains. They also need to introduce Red Hulk into the verse, and since Thunderbolts has not a Red Hulk in sight, I'm betting on Dark Avengers to be the one where he gets to shine. I didn't count any Spider-Man films because of Marvel's relationship with Sony being so iffy and not really knowing whether or not we're going to get more films or just Spider-Man cameos, and them really not dictating the direction of the studio, rather just being cool additions. With that, we have a total of 16 films, which gives us 5 more years of films starting from 2026, letting the MCU cap out at 2031, which I have to say is a fairly decent run for a movie franchise.
Yeah, please subscribe, like this video for watching, and thanks for watching. See you guys, bye.